Well, hey there, Penn State football fans. Bob Flounders, joined by Max Ralph. It is Monday, October 20th. It's 1:21 p.m. I hope all you guys are doing as well as you can. Penn State is on a bye week. They were out in Iowa City on Saturday, as just about every one of you know. They played about as hard as they could possibly play, given the fact James Franklin's no longer here. They have a new head coach. They've made some adjustments. Terry Smith is running the show. They had an 11-point lead in the second half in one of the nastiest environments in the Big Ten. It is so loud out there. I don't know if you've never been to Kinnick Stadium at night. Those guys, it was bloodlust. It was impressive how intimidating that was. They couldn't get it done. A lot of the same issues, Max. I wanted to just start here with you. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening. I've had plenty to write and say. Max, you've been following as closely as I have. Just your thoughts on what you saw. Maybe you didn't see it because it was on Peacock and it was like it's like yeah. But just your thoughts, Max, on what you saw from this team on Saturday night with a new quarterback, a new head coach, a new plan of attack on offense, and kind of just as you look at the remainder of the regular season after the bye, just the Penn State's big picture. What interests you the most?
Yeah, so I did tune in and follow on Peacock. It was an arduous task, I'd say,
Yeah, I
because
heard.
while I am savvy in streaming service language, I can get there easy. It was lagging like hell throughout the entire game. So not awesome there, but I did get to watch. I thought it was a really intriguing game because, as you said, Bob, like this is a really tough environment. We
Yeah.
know what Iowa can bring, and Ethan Grunkemeyer, though the passing game was ugly, there were no pre-snap penalties. He had everything going at the line of scrimmage. I thought for the most part he handled it really well, and Penn State, like you said, had an 11-point lead in the second half, and against an Iowa team that has just no history of offensive success, that should be enough. And it wasn't. It wasn't. I think about the way that some of these other games went downhill. Obviously, UCLA, the defense just got shredded. The offense did everything it could to come back. But against Northwestern and Oregon, the offense couldn't stay on the field long enough to give the defense much of a chance. I remember writing in post game takeaways from that, like the time of possession was so skewed in favor of the opponent. It wasn't the case this time. The
Yeah.
offense didn't score enough touchdowns. That is absolutely true. Did not convert in the red zone enough. But I look at the fourth quarter. You have that drive where you take up more than 8 minutes of game time from 13 minutes to about 5 in the fourth quarter. You end up getting a field goal. That should have been a touchdown. That needed to be a touchdown. Game's over if you score a touchdown on that drive.
Nobody dropped a touchdown pass on that drive.
That's exactly true. But still, you get points. You make it. Iowa's got to have a touchdown to beat you, and you take off that much time on the clock. The offense, more or less, though it was not spectacular
Yeah.
in that game, did enough to win.
Yeah.
And the defense was beaten once again, and just like look, no offense to Mark Gronowski because he played a hell of a game, but he is not the athlete that Nico
No.
Iamaleava is, and he outran Nico Iamaleava against this defense. I think Jim Knowles tried some new stuff. I just wrote in a post on PennLive, like there was more three linebacker stuff. They moved Deny around. They did a lot of things to try and stop Iowa because obviously Iowa was going to run the ball. That's all they do. And it just didn't work. And I think we're getting to the point where the effort was not the question this weekend. And I think we got to talk about this defense and especially the defensive front just isn't very good, Bob.
Yeah.
And it's shocking. We knew that there would be depth questions, but I don't think we expected the top group to struggle this much this season. I think Jim Knowles is partially to blame. I don't think it's nearly all on him. I think there are execution issues galore. And when you turn it to the big picture, I think you got to figure out if Ethan Grunkemeyer could be the quarterback of the future. Obviously, there are questions as to whether he transfers or a new head coach wants to bring in his own guy, depending on how all of this works out. But you got to see, is this the guy that could do it in the future if that's how things go? I want to see more of Kobe Howard and Tyseer Denmark in the passing game. Obviously, this high-profile, expensive transfer receiver class has not been nearly good enough. Very, very bad. Devontae Ross has had a few moments. That's about it. And why not give the young guys some more run? I think that'll happen. I mean, they played for the most since I think week one this past weekend, and it still wasn't very much. But I do think Terry Smith is going to give those guys some runway. At this point, I think you just say, look, if you already burned a red shirt and you're young, you're playing just about every snap. If you are interested in burning a red shirt and don't want to stay here the rest of the year,
Mhm.
you are getting every snap because there's nothing to lose. I mean, you got to beat one of Ohio State, Indiana, or Nebraska, who obviously lost one that
Mhm.
fans are not going to be happy about when we talk about Matt Rule this week. But Minnesota's not a bad team. But you got to beat one of those three teams that were just ranked last week in order to even become eligible for a bowl game. And look, I don't see it happening personally.
Mhm.
And so you got to turn toward the future. I think Terry Smith understands that. I think he will do that. But that's all you really have left to play for this year. And even if this Penn State team somehow gets into bowl contention with an interim coach, are they going to accept it? Are they going to want to play in a bowl game? Who knows? It's disastrous, and it has been for weeks. But
Yeah.
you got to a point on Saturday where you said if they win this game and they win three or four down the stretch, really nice job by Terry Smith. You have some hope for some guys sticking around next year. It's just this defense is ugly. The passing game is ugly. There's a lot on the shoulders of Andy Kotelnicki. You got to see what you might have for next year, and that's really about all you have moving forward.
Yeah, I certainly agree with I think everything that you said. I just think the one thing I wanted to bring up, and I know this is a Penn State centric podcast, but I have to say this. So Penn State had a wasted a golden opportunity to get momentum for a team that needed some good news for a coach who, is still going to be finding his way. It's just they could not capitalize on some genuine buffoonery by Kirk
Yes.
Ferentz and his staff. I mean, I'm just going to say it. This is my 24th year. Kirk Ferentz has built his reputation on conservative play, keeping the team in the game, grinding away. And if I was an Iowa fan, I would be furious at that man. And you know what? He was so upset with some of the decisions he made, not only on that field goal attempt, but the way they approached this game. He was literally in tears, Max, when he met the Iowa media. He got choked up. I was trying to get stuff up. They had the feed of his press conference. You know, on the TVs, and some of the longtime Iowa guys were asking about, did you feel like, as hard as your team had to come back, did you, basically, I'm paraphrasing, did you feel like you put your team in position to win? And he basically laughed and he went into a long explanation why he did not. And at the end, he was struggling to hold it together because he realized how stupid he was. That was coaching failure all the way through. That field goal decision is maybe the dumbest thing I've ever seen
It's
an
up there.
opponent do. But better, more than that, Max, more than that, the decision to even throw the ball at all against this team after watching the tape and it has the game played out. They're going for two twice and they're throwing the ball and the ball has no chance to succeed. He tried to, the quarterback, who is very limited, I think, as a thrower, I don't think anyone would argue with that, tried to fit a slant in on that first drive that I mean, there was very good coverage on the play. The ball, I think, carried off the receiver, and Zake Wheatley made an incredible play. But they essentially gave Penn State 10 to 14 points, as well as the offense played, as hard as Kaytron Allen ran in that game. They probably should never have come anywhere near close to 24 points. If Pena catches that ball, I think I would say they probably should have finished with maybe 17 in that game. But my point, though, is I'm making these things about Iowa, but I think Penn State, when they look back on this game and how winnable it was, I think it might be I think it was a lot more winnable maybe than some Penn State fans realize.
Yeah, it absolutely was. I'm glad you brought up Kirk Ferentz because what are you thinking lining up for a 66-yard field goal.
I think somebody called timeout, and then they still went. They gave him a practice kick.
Terry Smith
Terry
called
Smith
timeout.
lost.
Yes. He called timeout, and he was pissed that Iowa got to kick the practice one because I mean rightfully so. He called the timeout in plenty of time, but I actually think it worked out in Penn State's favor because he realized this one's got to come out a lot lower than I was planning to initially kick it, and ends up getting blocked easily and turns into a touchdown. But like a 66-yard field goal would tie an NFL record. And this is an outdoor stadium, and it's a college kicker. I mean, Kirk Ferentz, you are the longest tenured head coach in the Big Ten. You should not be doing this. They also punted on a 4th and 1 in the second half, or it might have been in the first half.
It was the first half, I think. Yeah,
I'm mixed up, but either way, you're gashing the run defense, and you punt it away from near midfield on 4th and 1. Just like, what are you doing? And that's the point I made when I talked about the offense, Bob, was like, yes, they could not stay on the field for so long in some of these other losses. But playing at Iowa, and as you called it, such a tough environment, you outpossessed the Hawkeyes by 12 minutes at the end of the day. You gave Iowa a taste of its own medicine. You controlled the ball. You went for it on 4th downs and made long drives. Like, you did so many things right, and your defense can't get one stop at the end. It just really, really demoralizing. I was impressed with Terry Smith much more than I was with Kirk Ferentz, to your point. And I feel bad for a guy like Terry Smith who puts a lot into this. I feel bad for Kaytron Allen, who runs his ass off and has all year. And like, Kaytron Allen is maybe second to Jeremiah Love this year. I mean, when you look at the lack of passing threat that Penn State has and the production that he's still been able to put out, Jeremiah Love is incredible, but Kaytron Allen is probably right behind him. He is going to make a hell of a lot of money in the NFL next year. I feel bad for guys like that who have given everything to this team and still performed well and have results like that, because it keeps getting uglier.
Yeah. Max, I mean, I've had the pleasure of covering a lot of good Penn State running backs. My first year was Larry Johnson's 2,000-yard season in 2002. Even a guy like Tony Hunt, 2005, 2006, Tony Hunt, Evan Royster, the program's all-time leading rusher. I have some, he was as dependable and durable a back that Penn State has had. I don't really need to say a whole lot about Saquon Barkley. Even, a guy like Miles Sanders, Journey Brown, who sadly his career was over just as it was really getting started. I mean, but what Kaytron Allen did against a pretty good defense in that environment, basically with an Iowa defense very, very early on that was just sitting on every route that they Penn State attempted to run. For what Kaytron did in that game is one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. And it's not that the Penn State offensive line, who didn't have Venga Ioane available, which was a surprise. It was not that they did not play well. I think they played about as well as they could. But what Kaytron was able to do as far as, gaining more yards, running through contract, some of the cuts he made to free up, to turn a 3-yard gain into maybe a 9 or 12. He was fantastic. And it convinces me now more than ever, with him getting a career high in carries, it was a career high in yards. He had very little help in terms of the pass game. It's pretty clear why and who decided he wasn't going to be the feature back. And I have to say it was clearly a one-man decision. And it just more than ever, it cements my thought that they absolutely needed to move on from James. He was in the way, and this to me was a bright spot. I don't know how much that's going to matter against a team like Indiana or at Ohio State, but I'm just glad Kaytron got a chance to show how good of a running back he is and how good of a running back he has become since the end of last year. It really started, I think, during the postseason run and the Oregon game and the Big Ten title game and what he did in the playoffs. But then he built on that, and he was he was like a bird in a cage, man. He was getting outchanced by Nick Singleton, and it just wasn't right. Nick's a talented kid, but it is very clear who the best running back is on this team, and he might be the best running back not only in the Big Ten, but he's. It was a pleasure just watching him operate.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. And one of the things that I wrote this morning, Bob, that maybe I think Terry Smith mentioned it in the post game, but some fans may overlook. In his 28 carries, he did not lose a single yard.
He hasn't lost a yard all year.
Yeah,
not one. He has
right.
0 lost yards.
Yeah, this guy is just unbelievable. The vision, the physicality, they've always been there for him, but the extra burst to get through the hole, to break away on a 67-yard touchdown like we saw in week 2, he remade himself in the offseason, and he has been incredible. Obviously, there hasn't been a lot of good to talk about for Penn State this season, but Kaytron Allen is absolutely a standout. Bob, I think you're right. I think it's pretty clear his usage this weekend reveals the problems that were going on before this under James Franklin. And I can't help but wonder if Penn State committed to him in the way that the team should have, before now, he would have blown Evan Royster's record out of the water. I mean, he's got a chance to get there still in these final 5 games, and a fairly solid chance. Yeah. But if he got carries like he should have through 4 games, he would have blown that record out of the water. And I hope for his sake that he's still able to get it, because he honestly deserves it at this point.
Yeah, I mentioned Ioane. That I don't mean to name drop. I'm sitting in the Iowa press box about an hour before the game, and people are just running around. So Jack Ham, who I think everyone knows, I've known him for a while. He sits down next to me. He's got the roster in his hands. He's not quite worked up yet. He's smiling at me. We exchanged some pleasantries. And he goes, "Hey, so what's up?" I said, "So what do you mean, what's up?" He goes, "Yeah, what do you think?" I said, "Well, I said, Venga's not playing." And he goes, "What do you mean Venga's not playing?" I said, "No, Venga's not. He's on the availability report." I called it up on my screen. I said, "You guys don't have Venga tonight." And it caught him off guard. And I don't think that's surprising, but his reaction was priceless, because it was more like, what else does this team have to deal with in the last couple of weeks? But he wasn't available. They moved Shanahan to left guard. Donko played right guard. I believe I had that right. I thought, considering all of the moving parts and the noise, and I thought that offensive line, I thought it was pretty good. There were times that Iowa got some pressure, especially early in the game on Grunk, but his footwork in the pocket was really good. That 4th and 4 play on that first drive, I thought they had him, and he got out of it. He was pretty nimble. I think he ran for 9 yards, and I thought that was a great move. But Terry said, and I think you wrote, like, he's going to be available at some point. Venga is, and that is good news. But I don't know how much the offensive line is going to be able to help this team against teams that are better than them. So as we move forward, I thought it was a good sign. We still haven't seen Cooper Cousins, Max, but when I think about this offense, and I think about this defense, and I think about the schedule that they have, and I think about the next 2 games, even though they have a little break, I am just wondering, if you're the coaching staff and if you're Terry, I think I know what his message is going to be, but it's going to be really hard, I think, for them to keep their chins up. I think if the other teams play well, that they're going to face. And it's one thing for them to play their asses off, and I think I can say verbatim, that is what Terry Smith is going to say, and let the chips fall where they may. Yeah. But they could play their butts off, and it could still get ugly. And it's just so shocking to me that I said it was October 20th. I was thinking, man, we would be doing podcasts on September 20th, and it's surreal. It's just surreal how the ceiling has fallen in on this team, and I don't think I don't know how much better it's going to get, and it might be worse.
Yeah, I think it can honestly only get worse. Like, Penn State and Ohio State have played a lot of close games over the past few years, even when we feel like Ohio State might have a much better team or whatever it may be. I mean, I think back to the last time they played at night. I think Penn State ended up
141.
losing by 9 points, but like Sean Clifford led a close comeback in the second half, and like that team was not very. That Penn State team was not great, and they still played them hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think we may be heading for the first Ohio State blowout of Penn State that we've seen in quite some time.
Yeah.
The Ohio State defense is just so good,
Yeah.
and you get that young quarterback in there. I don't know, Bob. You're right. Like I think you can't look at this kind of as I said at the open. You can't look at this rest of the season as anything other than a tryout, in my opinion, for a
Mm-hmm.
couple of veteran guys who still deserve it for the NFL. Your Kaytron Allens, your Vanga Ioanes when healthy, your Drew Sheltons, your Denai Dennis Sutton, your Zake Wheatley. Those guys are trying out for the NFL right now. They're trying to get good tape.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the tryout extends to young guys. Your Kobe Howard, your Yvonne Kamaju, your maybe Chaz Coleman, but we really haven't seen a lot of him lately. Your Darius Dixon, your Jameer Joseph, your whoever it may be. The rest of the season is a tryout for next year for the new coaching staff to say, hey, you are a guy that we cannot lose. You are a priority when we get here. I don't know. It's just it's hard. It's hard. You're right. It's surreal. We try every week to
Mm-hmm.
kind of contextualize how all of this happened, but it's gotten to a point where it's hard to say at all. Like after Oregon, you say, oh, the offense sucked for 3.5 quarters and the defense ran out of gas. After UCLA, you say the defense couldn't stop anything. They got knocked down by the wind. In the Northwestern game, you say, well, this team's just defeated from 3 losses in a row. This game, you say, they played hard, but the defense got beat again. It's just like there's a different thing every week.
Different narrative, yeah.
It's just it's not what anybody expected. I mean, you can say everybody was wrong for having Penn State as the number 2 team in the country. And sure, maybe there were signs in the preseason that this team wasn't going to be that good. But I think for this team to be this bad and for us to be in a situation where we're in the middle of October and James Franklin is no longer the head coach at Penn State, it's just shocking. It really still is. It's unbelievable how we got here.
It's the Blue White Breakdown here on Monday. Penn State's second bye week is underway. Very, very difficult loss to an Iowa team that, I don't know. They have some talented players, but I admired the way they hung in there too against Penn State and overcame some things by the longest tenured decisions by the longest tenured coach in the Big Ten. I got to give them credit too. I want to just bring up a couple more things here. Thanks everyone for either watching us or listening. You talked about the audition for some Penn State players that are going to play in the league. I wanted to touch on one player in particular because what I've noticed from him, even in this losing streak, and especially I think the last 3 games, somebody who has been emotional on the field and has played very, very hard, and he's played at top end speed. Zake Wheatley is a guy that has really, really impressed me the last 3 weeks. Depending on your view of that quarterback draw, that was a weird alignment. It looked to me. We were talking about it after the game, Greg Pickle and I, in an airport in the O'Hare Airport as we watched it. It looked like Jim Knowles had Elliott Washington as a deep center field spy against the quarterback run, because I've never really seen Elliott there. And then Zake Wheatley was off to the side, closer to the line of scrimmage. You watched the play, the parting of the Red Seas at scrimmage. Elliott had to make the play. He did not. Zake Wheatley flew in like a shot from the side and just missed. If you see it from the right angle, he was moving at a high rate of speed. It looks like he missed too. I don't know that his angle was going to really stop a 235-pound quarterback, but I don't fault him on that. That one-handed interception was great. He is in the mix. He is mixing it up in run support. He was very, very upset after the game on the field following the Northwestern game. You could see he was almost talking to himself. He couldn't believe what he had just kind of been a part of. Effort is not. Terry Smith was right. Effort is not a problem for this team right now, and I don't think it really will be, especially with the younger players. I have absolutely zero concerns about the effort of at least two players. One is Kaytron Allen. The other is Zake Wheatley. I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name. But I think if you watch him, it's easy to kind of blame a lot of players and a lot of veteran players for the run struggles. But that really is a defensive linebacker issue. I think Wheatley has really. I think if you watch the tape of him this year and you're an NFL evaluator, I think there's a lot to like about what Wheatley has done, especially now that all their goals are really kind of over. I think he's played very hard.
Yeah, and that's all you can really ask of him to an extent. He's another guy, kind of similar to a Nick Dawkins almost, where he started his career. He actually was a corner, made the switch to safety at one point. Just wasn't quite there as a freshman, physically, mentally, all of it. And then in his second year, he wins takeaway king in camp, makes a couple of big plays in the middle of the season. Third year starts to play more. Fourth year as a redshirt senior, he really bursts onto the scene when Penn State needed him too, behind an injured KJ Winston and alongside Jalen Reed. And now he's a leader of this team, and he's playing hard, and that's all you can really ask for him. He's made a couple of plays this year that Penn State has really needed in big moments. I also think it's interesting.
On 4th and 2 that he came in and he made. He gave the offense a chance. Yep, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're all good, Bob. You're more than right there. And I just think it's interesting. I almost think he's a case where Jim Knowles' defense, for better or worse, has kind of changed the way we look at Zake Wheatley. I think he's asked him to play in a different way than maybe what fits Zake's skill set. Zake is a see ball, get ball kind of guy, both in the air and on the ground. And sometimes I think he's asked him to play a little bit too much center field, ask him to read things in the backfield. I wonder maybe if things would have been different if this were a different defense for Zake, but you're absolutely right. The effort is still there. And he's one of the few guys you can say that about. And he is a feel good story at Penn State too, because he's had a long career to get here, and for him to be, the guy in the back end. And he's, for the most part, done a pretty solid job. I mean, there's obviously been issues all over the field on both sides of the ball, but a guy who deserves some flowers, especially for that effort against Iowa.
Yeah, and I do think there has been an adjustment. I'm glad you brought that up. He's in a different role.
Mm-hmm.
He thrived. Once he got comfortable with what Tom Allen was asking him to do and the way they were playing, after you got past Abdul Carter and Deny and maybe Kobe King, I think he was maybe their third or fourth best player down the stretch, and he made some incredible plays. But I just wanted, before we wrap this up, I wanted to get to something right now because I've been thinking about it, and I wrote something on PennLive a little while ago. It was just a detailed look at. I wasn't trying to be Captain Obvious, but I was just trying to just point out just how bad in this losing streak the run defense has truly been, and also Terry called them out after the game. The wideouts it just has been. I mean, Devontae Ross has been the best one by far.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that was the expectation. Devontae Ross has been the best one by far. He's had some really nice moments, even during this losing streak against Oregon, against Northwestern. His numbers weren't great in the Iowa game. He drew a pass interference. The other guys, so it's a problem, and they've all but disappeared in this losing streak. There's a lot you could make a lot of arguments on why that is, but I wanted to say this. When you think about Penn State and who they brought in at wide receiver the last couple of years, and not just these three guys, like a guy like Dante Cephas, maybe some other names. My question is this. It's either one or the other, or it might be both. Either, Max, the people who watched the tape of these guys before they got to Penn State and thought, you know what? These guys are going to fit in perfectly for what we need. Either those guys or Marcus Higgins, the wideouts coach. Something's got to give, because somebody is not getting it done. It's either both of those things, or somebody's somebody is not for long at Penn State because they have just missed and they have not really delivered. I know they have a great running back, great running backs, a good running back room, a great offensive line. Tyler Warren was incredible. But to me, there has to be something done about this because they just have not. They've either misevaluated or not coached or developed these guys because it's just been a failure.
Yeah, so I'll take you a step further there. I think Ethan Grunkemeyer, like we talked about, handled the environment really well this weekend, but he only threw 3 passes down the field of 20 or more yards. Missed all of them. One of them was intercepted. His average depth of target in this game, which is how far down the field he throws the ball, was 6.4 yards. Now, for the nation, in quarterbacks that have dropped back to pass at least 65 times, that would rank 149th. Bob, there are only 136 FBS teams. That means there are backup quarterbacks around the country that are throwing the ball farther on average than Ethan Grunkemeyer did across an entire game at Iowa. And let me take it even a step further. This is not just an Ethan Grunkemeyer facing a difficult Iowa defense problem, Bob.
Yeah.
Drew Aller's average depth of target was 8.2 yards down the field, 104th, which, again, 136 FBS teams. So I think that you have to look at this is either an Andy Kotelnicki scheme problem. Ethan Grunkemeyer looked like he was escaping the pocket a lot, and he was under pressure some, but not a ton. I think that his first read just wasn't there very often, and he probably either had it in his mind or was coached to say, if your first read's not there in this situation, just take off. I don't think his first read was there very often. So you could say this is Andy Kotelnicki's scheme. You could say this is the receivers who are not separating at the top of the routes, who are just not giving enough effort, who are dropping passes, whatever it may be. It's probably a combination of those three. But what I will say is that the difference in this receiving group versus ones in the past, Adante Cephas went on to Kent State after his year at Penn State and did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Mari Evans went out to Washington and has not done anything. Trey Wallace had 2 really good games at Ole Miss, but has done nothing since then. These guys this season, Trevor Pena had almost 1,000 yards at Syracuse last year. Devontae Ross had more than 1,000 at Troy. And in a weird USC offense, Kyron Hudson still had 400 yards. These guys did it at other places in their roles. The fact that they're not doing it here leads me to believe it's not a talent issue, and it's either a scheme/coaching issue or it's a flat-out effort issue. And whichever one it is, I do think at the end of the day that probably falls on the coaching staff because they targeted these guys for a reason. They were excited about these guys, and I was with them. I think on paper, this is the best receiving core Penn State has had since it had Parker Washington and Mitchell Tinsley, maybe Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And it just hasn't worked. And I think there are a lot of factors going into it. But those numbers I dug up this morning on the average depth of target was just like, oh my God, like this is unbelievable, unsustainable, whatever words you want to use. It's not good. It's not good enough.
Yeah. It's not going to get better. It's just not. There's this between the talent they're going to be facing, and there's just enough out there to know that you can only make so many adjustments. And it is a young quarterback. There's going to be just some games where he does make some bad decisions, and so it's just not going to get better. So when you look at the games that they're going to play, I would say they're in my mind, whether it's on the road or the quality of the talent or the mindset of the teams or the mindset of the veterans. When I think of maybe the winnable games for Penn State, legitimately winnable, where they play well and they have a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter, I mean, I don't know that they're going to be blowing anybody out, because there's at least one shaky team I think left on the schedule in Michigan State. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. My point though is when I think about winnable games for this team, it might be 2 or it might be 1, and that for me, things can change. People can get hurt. That's I think a 5-win season. I don't know if I honestly see, considering the mindset and after what's going to happen in the next 2 games, I don't know if I can honestly say I see the possibility of a 500 or better season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's going to come down to. I mean, we can say it right here. None of us expects Penn State to upset Ohio State or Indiana.
No.
So it's
Yeah.
going to come down to you got to rattle off 3 straight wins in this current situation
Yeah.
after losing what we expect to be 6 straight. I don't know how you get up after you lose 6 straight, but you're going to have to win 3 straight against Michigan State, Nebraska, and Rutgers to make a bowl. And Michigan State has struggled a lot.
Hmm.
Nebraska was just ranked and did not play its best game against Minnesota. But as we know, we just last year a Minnesota team that was kind of under the radar
Yep.
gave Penn State a fight.
Tough
PJ
play. Yeah.
PJ Fleck always has his teams playing hard, so Nebraska still has talent and is worth keeping an eye on. And Rutgers is, they're kind of the same as a Minnesota,
Yeah.
maybe just a step down. They play hard often, will surprise you sometimes. Is Penn State really going to win 3 in a row against those teams?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough, Bob.
Yeah, and the thing that also now is quite apparent to the rest of the Big Ten is there's no mystique with Penn State this year. There's
Hmm.
no daunting. Oh my, we got to play our best game. God, that no one is. There's no intimidation anymore. There's no fear, and I mean these guys are lining up and they're licking. They've gotten the crap kicked out. Some of these programs
Oh
have
yeah.
gotten the crap kicked out of them by, and I'm talking about Rutgers
Hmm.
specifically, have gotten the crap kicked out of them by Penn State over the years. The stats are just flat out ugly since like 2014. And if you look at the history of the series, well, you know what? There will never be a better opportunity for Rutgers at home to knock off Penn State. So when you think about it like that, it's gonna be very tough. And yeah, and Terry's gonna have to hold this team together, especially with the veterans. It's really going to be tough. We're talking about a 6-game losing streak going into the last 3 games, and you just wonder about some of the players. And they're human, right? It's just mentally it's really tough, and they're all going to be beat up. They're all going to be dealing with some sorts of injuries, and you can talk about playing for your teammates and playing for the honor of Penn State, but when you have separated rib cartilage, and you have a hyperextended elbow, or you've got cartilage issue in one of the knees, or you're taking pain medicine to get through a week, it's really easy to say that, but once the reality sets in that this is not going to be probably a winning team, they're going to have to make some decisions. They just really are, and I think Terry knows that it's not going to be easy. And that's, I guess, to wrap it up. That's why when I referenced this was the Iowa game, winning this Iowa game, it was there for the taking in the second half, given all the things that transpired, including Kirk Ferentz's coaching. But they win this. They win that game, Max. I think it's. There's still some reality waiting for Penn State against some good teams, but it's such a different. It's a different state for all these players mentally, and it's really a big deal. I think they get that win. They get a bye week. The coaching staff can take a breath, and now everything is just amplified. So I think it's a very, very difficult situation, and considering that they were once number 2 in the nation. I mean, they've had a 3-9 season that I've covered, a 4-7 season that I've covered, but from start to finish, there's never in my time at Penn State, and I think rarely at Penn State, there's never really been a situation quite like this at Penn State.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't really have anything to add there other than just to piggyback on a point you made toward the start of that there. Is there anybody in the country or in the Big Ten more disappointed to not have Penn State on the schedule than Mike Loxley?
That's cool. Especially after last year.
I mean,
well said, Max. Well said. Mike Loxley is probably furious in his office right now. I think he would play Penn State in the Beaver Stadium parking lot.
Yeah.
But with the caveat that James coached against him, that is about the only thing else he could wish for, because that was an ugly exchange. That wasn't ugly, but you could tell.
There's animosity between those two.
There's no question, and that's
long standing.
something I didn't consider. And actually, Max, you could probably have a lot of fun with a column about that. And I think a lot of people would say, you know what? Poor Mike Loxley, he's eaten it so many times against James Franklin at Penn State. The one time
Yeah.
he had him right where he wanted him, he goes and gets fined.
Yeah. Well, and look, Maryland had a good start to the year,
Yeah.
so they're probably going to end up being bowl eligible. I know they've lost a couple in a row now, but who says no to a Penn State Maryland exhibition game on Christmas Day? Just to let Mike Loxley have some demons out.
Yeah. All right, Max. Hey, listen. We once again we've bled into the 40th or so minute of this blue-white breakdown. Only hoping to get to about 25, but there's a lot to talk to, a lot of detail there. I think some really good thoughts from you on where Penn State is, what the future is in store. Also your thoughts on the wideout room and kind of how we got there. But I know you, even though it's a bye week, I believe you and Johnny are still planning to go live on Thursday at noon.
That's
and
correct.
I'm sure Johnny will have some interesting. Now that he's back from Minnesota, I think he was out. Minneapolis, I think he was out there for the Eagles-Vikings game. I'm sure he'll have some thoughts. He might even have some. He wrote a column about it. He might even have some reaction to what he thought about James Franklin on ESPN's Game Day set and the way that thing played out. But that's a Blue White Breakdown podcast for another day. Max, I enjoyed talking with you. I hope everyone enjoyed watching and listening to this. There's more to come. It's a bye week, but we have a lot to get to. And just check out all our stuff on PennLive because it's coming. People, it's coming fast and it's coming furious.